My name's Brian Evans. I'm a mechanic out of Austin, the kind of guy who measures time in oil changes and seasons by what tires people keep asking me to mount. I've got a wife, Kara, and a little girl, Lily, who thinks every truck on the road is daddy's truck because she's at that age where the world is mostly made out of love and kisses. I'm telling you that upfront because this wasn't some reckless, let's go poke the dark with a stick thing. I had every reason to come back, and I still almost didn't. Why I went? I needed to clear my head. That's the simple truth. The shop had been eating me alive, late invoices, a lift that kept slipping a tooth, customers who think it was fine yesterday is a diagnostic method. Then Kara's mom got sick again, and my wife was running on fumes but still smiling so Lily wouldn't worry. I started doing that thing where you're physically present but mentally somewhere else, staring at a bolt without turning it. Kara caught me in the garage one night, hands on the workbench like I was praying to it. Go, she said, not angry, not cold, just firm. Take a few days, drive, sleep, be a human. So I planned a winter road trip, not some luxury vacation, just me, my old Forerunner, a thermos of coffee, and a loop that would end up in the Blue Mountains. Now, I know what you're thinking. Blue Mountains could mean a couple places people casually call that. I mean the Blue Mountains in the Pacific Northwest, eastern Oregon, where the pines look like they're holding up the sky and the snow turns every sound into a secret. It fit better, anyway. If there's one thing I learned after this, it's that places don't get reputations for no reason. Before I left, I did what I always do. Check the truck like I was sending it into war. Fluids, belts, hoses, battery, rotors, tires. I threw in a full-size spare, chains, a basic tool roll, a short shovel, a tow strap, and a heavy flashlight. I also tossed in the 357 revolver my dad left me. Legal, locked case, the whole grown-up routine. I never bring it because I'm tough. I bring it because life is unpredictable, and I'm not interested in losing an argument with it. The last thing I packed was something dumb, a magazine. I'm not a conspiracy guy. I don't sit around reading about monsters, but a customer, older rancher type, had left a hunting and outdoors magazine on the counter the week before, and inside was this long feature about alleged Dogman sightings. Wolves walking upright, eye shine higher than a man, stalking behavior, weirdly intelligent. I read it while eating lunch, mostly to laugh at it, until a few details snagged in my brain like a fishhook. Witnesses describing front shoulders like a bodybuilder, not a wolf. Hands, not paws, when it needed them. A habit of toying with people, not just charging like an animal. And the one that stuck worst, the smell. Wet dog, rot, and something metallic, like pennies. I remember snorting, pushing the magazine away and thinking, people will believe anything. I still had it in my bag when I left. The first day was normal. Long stretches, podcasts, gas station coffee that tastes like regret. I called Kara at stops, sent Lily a picture of snow for the first time she'd ever seen it in a photo from her dad. She sent back a voice note yelling, "Snow!" like it was a new color. Second day, the world changed. By midday, I was climbing into real winter. The weather was calm like I'd hoped. No blizzard, no ice storm. Just a clean cold that made the sky look sharper. Snow sat on the branches in thick slabs. The road was plowed but narrow, and every now and then the forest opened into a view of white ridges rolling away like waves. That's the thing about winter woods. They're beautiful in a way that makes you lower your voice without realizing it. I'd planned to stay at a cheap motel in a small town near the edge of the mountains, but I got cocky. The road was clear, the truck was strong, the day still had light in it, so I kept going. At around 4:30 p.m., the sun started to fade fast, like someone pulled a curtain. I looked at my GPS, no service of course, so it was just a blue dot floating in grey emptiness. The main route split into a smaller forest road with a sign that looked old enough to have survived a few wars. NF-48. Seasonal conditions. Travel at your own risk. I told myself I'd drive another 40 minutes, find a turnout, take some pictures, turn back. You know how liars talk to themselves. 20 minutes down the road, I saw the first sign that something was off. Not tracks, not a howl, not a shadow in the trees. A deer, standing in the middle of the road, perfectly still. It wasn't injured, it wasn't grazing, it was just frozen, facing into the forest like it was watching something and had forgotten how legs work. I slowed, tapped the horn. Nothing. I rolled closer and the deer's head turned toward my headlights, slowly, and its eyes reflected bright. That's normal. What wasn't normal was the expression on its face. Yeah, I know how that sounds, but it looked aware in the wrong way, like it was listening for a voice I couldn't hear. Then it bolted. Not away from me, toward the trees, and it went so hard it slipped and nearly fell. It crashed through brush like it was running for its life. That should have been enough. Instead, I laughed once, nervous, stupid, and said it out loud. Alright then. A mechanic talking to the dark. Real brave. I found a turnout near an old service road and parked. The forest pressed close on both sides. No wind, no birds, just that padded muffled silence snow gives you, like the whole world is holding its breath. I killed the engine, stepped out and immediately regretted it, because the cold slapped my teeth. I walked around the truck, stretched my legs and took a couple photos. The sky was going purple, the trees were black pillars. Everything looked like a postcard nobody would ever send. Then I smelled it. At first I thought it was my own truck. Oil leak burning off the exhaust maybe. That familiar hot metal smell. But this was different. Wet dog, rot, and pennies. I remember the magazine line about the smell, and how my brain tried to make a joke out of it, and failed. I stood there, breathing shallow, feeling something primitive rise up behind my ribs. That's when the snow behind me crunched. One step, then another. Not a deer, too heavy, too measured. I turned slowly, because turning fast felt like inviting whatever it was to pounce. The truck's headlights were still on, throwing a wide cone down the road. The forest edge to my right was a wall of dark, and in the dark, just beyond the reach of the light, something tall shifted. You know, when you look at a tree and then realize it's not a tree. This was like that, but worse. It moved forward a fraction, and the headlights caught part of it. A shoulder, a side, hair that looked matted, clumped with snow. Then the face. Not a wolf's face. A wolf's face is narrow. This was broader, heavier. A snout, yes, but too thick. The jawline sat wrong for an animal. And the eyes? God, the eyes. They reflected the light, but not like a deer, not like a dog. The reflection was a pale, sickly yellow that seemed to float in the skull, like lanterns inside a cave. It stepped forward again, and I saw its arms. Not legs, arms. Long, muscled, hanging down with hands that ended in dark claws. It wasn't on all fours. It wasn't fully upright either. It stood in this hunched posture, like it could choose either way, depending on what it needed. And it was tall, taller than me, and I'm not a small guy. My mouth went dry. I felt my hand drift toward my jacket pocket where the keys were, because suddenly the only thing that mattered was getting inside that truck. The creature didn't rush me, it just watched, like it was deciding what kind of day it wanted to have. I heard a sound then, soft, almost like a grunt, not a growl, not a bark, more like a low, amused huff. That's when I realized something that made my stomach drop. It knew I was scared, and it liked it. I backed up, slow, keeping the truck between me and the tree line. I reached the driver's door, opened it without taking my eyes off that shape, and slid in. My hands fumbled the key into the ignition. The truck started immediately, thank God, and I slammed the lock button like it was a life-saving ritual. I expected it to charge. It didn't. It stepped closer until it was right at the edge of the headlights, and for a second I saw it clearly. Thick fur, shoulders like a linebacker, and a scar line across its muzzle that pulled one side of its mouth into a permanent sneer. Then it tilted its head, and it smiled. I don't mean it showed teeth like animals do. I mean the expression looked intentional, like it understood what smiling meant and chose to do it anyway. I threw the truck into gear and took off. In the rearview mirror, I saw it move. Not chasing, not sprinting, just walking back into the dark like it had accomplished something, like it had introduced itself. I drove fast, too fast for a snowy forest road. My brain was stuck between denial and panic, trying to file what I'd seen under bear or moose or I'm tired. But bears don't stand like that. Moose don't have hands. And no normal animal smiles at you like you're a joke. I told myself, get back to town, get a room, go home tomorrow. Tell Kara you saw something weird and laugh about it later. Then my dash lit up. Battery light flickered once, then steady, "Come on," I muttered. "Not now." I eased off, listening. The engine sounded fine, but the voltage dropped on the little gauge I have installed because mechanic brain. I don't like surprises. The battery was draining. Alternator. Of course. Of course it had to be an alternator, because reality always kicks you in the teeth right when you're trying to pretend you're in control. I made it maybe another 10 minutes before the headlights dimmed slightly. The heater fan slowed, my radio died. I pulled over into another turnout because I didn't want to stall in the middle of the road and get stuck like a sitting duck. When the engine turned off, the silence felt louder than any sound. I sat there gripping the wheel, breathing hard. The inside of the truck smelled like my own fear and cold air. I considered driving anyway, just push it until it dies and deal with it wherever. But if the alternator was gone, I'd be driving on borrowed time. So I did what men do when they're trying to be rational. I popped the hood. Outside, the cold hit me like a shove. I kept the truck off to save what battery I had left. I clicked on my flashlight and aimed it at the alternator belt. The belt looked fine, tension was okay, no obvious break, which meant the alternator itself was probably cooked. I leaned in, half my body under the hood, and that's when I heard the noise again, a crunch. But not behind me this time, in the trees, to my left, maybe 30 yards in. Something moving through the snow slowly. I froze, flashlight beam trembling over metal and hoses. Then another sound, further right, like it was circling. I stood up fast, heart hammering, and swung the flashlight into the woods. Nothing. But the beam caught two reflective points low, then higher, then gone. My skin prickled. I shut the hood quietly, as if the act of making noise would summon it like a curse. I got back inside the truck, locked the doors, and sat with the revolver in my lap, still in its case, because part of my brain was screaming that handling it too soon would make this real. Then the tapping started, soft, rhythmic. Not on the window, not on the hood, on the side of the truck, near the rear quarter panel. Tap, tap, tap. Like fingernails, like claws testing metal. My throat tightened. I held my breath. The tapping moved forward along the side of the truck, slow, deliberate, until it reached the driver's door. Then it stopped. For a long moment, nothing happened. I couldn't see out well, my headlights were off, just faint moonlight reflecting on snow. The flashlight sat between my knees, aimed down, because I didn't want to shine it and give away exactly where I was looking. Then, right outside my window, I heard breathing. Not panting, not animal breath. A slow inhale, then exhale, wet and heavy, as if whatever it was had leaned close enough to fog the glass. I turned my head a fraction. The window was dark, but I saw a shape, a shadow against shadow. And then the glass fogged. A patch of condensation bloomed, and in it I saw the outline of a muzzle, pressed close. It was smelling me. The tapping began again, but this time it was different, faster, playful, like it was drumming. Tap, tap, tap. And then it dragged something down the door, slow and squealing, leaving a long scratch in the paint. My chest tightened with anger, irrational, stupid anger. That's my truck. That's my way home. That's... The scratch stopped, and something slid into view on the hood. A hand. A hand with long black claws. It spread, fingers played, and pressed down hard enough that the hood flexed slightly. Then the creature's head rose into the faint light at the edge of the windshield. It looked right at me. I could make out the scar on its muzzle, the lifted lip, and that same awful expression, like it knew this was its road, and I was just passing through by permission. It opened its mouth. No howl came out, no roar, just a low, quiet chuff, almost a laugh. Then it moved away from the front, vanishing into the dark. And immediately, something slammed into the rear of the truck. The whole vehicle jolted. I felt the impact in my teeth. Then another slam, side this time, like it was testing the truck, checking where it was weakest. It wasn't trying to break in yet. It was playing. That's what the magazine said. And now it made sick, perfect sense. It toys with people. I fumbled for my phone. No signal, no bars. Just a dead little icon of modern helplessness. I thought of Kara asleep back home, Lily's stuffed animal tucked under her chin, and the idea that my family might get a call saying I froze in a mountain turnout because my alternator failed. No, not like that. I clicked the flashlight on and shined it out the windshield, sweeping the beam. Nothing. Then, movement on the passenger side. A tall shape stepping into the beam, then out again, like it was teasing the light itself. I realized something else then, and it hit me like cold water. It was letting me see it when it wanted me to. It was in control of the whole situation. I grabbed the revolver case, popped it open, and pulled the gun out with shaking hands. I'm not proud of how my fingers fumbled. I'm a mechanic. My hands are supposed to be steady. But the animal part of my brain was screaming that I was about to be eaten alive. The truck rocked again, harder, and something hit the roof. Thump, like it had climbed up. Snow slid down the windshield in a soft sheet. Then claws scraped across the roof, right above my head, slow, like it was drawing a line. Then it moved to the driver's side. The roof dented slightly under weight, and then, right above my window, I heard it. A whisper. Not words, not a voice, but a sound that mimicked a human attempt of speaking. Wet, broken, forced, through an animal throat. It wasn't saying anything intelligible. It was just letting me know it could. I raised the revolver and aimed at the window, breathing fast. The whisper stopped. Then the creature dropped down from the roof with a heavy thud, landing right beside the driver's door. The door handle rattled once, not in an animal pawing randomly way, in a deliberate tug, then another. Then it stopped. A pause. And I knew what it was doing. It was making me imagine the handle lifting, making me imagine the door opening, making me imagine its face inches from mine. The air inside the truck felt thin, my eyes burned. I did the only thing I could think of. I fired. One shot through the closed window. The gun roared inside the cab like a bomb. The glass exploded outward in a spray of shards and white powderish snow dust. The smell hit instantly, wet rot and pennies. And I heard it, an actual sound of pain, a harsh snarl that was too deep for any normal animal. Something slammed into the side of the truck in rage, denting the door inward. I screamed, not proud, but it happened, and shoved myself toward the passenger side to get away from the broken window. I expected it to come through. Instead, it backed off. Not because it was scared, because it was recalculating. Like a smart opponent who just got reminded you can bite back. That gave me a sliver of time, and time was all I needed. I sat there shaking, trying to think like a mechanic instead of prey. Alternators dead, batteries draining, but if I kept the engine running, I could drive for a while. Maybe enough to get downhill, maybe enough to find a ranger station, a cabin, anything. The problem? Starting the truck would make noise and light, and that thing was right outside. Still, doing nothing meant freezing or getting pulled out. I turned the key. The engine cranked sluggishly, then caught. The headlights flickered weakly. The cab lights glowed like a dying candle. And there it was, stepping into the headlights pale, close enough that I could see where my bullet had grazed it. A dark line in the fur near the shoulder. A wet patch. Not a kill shot. Not even close. It stared at me with that same yellow eye shine. Then it did something I'll never forget. It stepped to the side of the road and gestured. One arm lifted, slow, like it was pointing down the road, as if to say, "Go on, run." A challenge, a joke. I didn't take the bait emotionally, but I did take it literally. I put the truck in gear and drove. The creature didn't chase immediately. It let me get a head start. Because the hunt is sweeter when the prey thinks it has a chance. The road was narrow and twisting. My headlights were weak. The heater barely worked. The broken driver's window let in a ribbon of knife-cold air, and snow swirled inside the cab. And then I saw it. Up ahead in the headlights, a shape crossing the road. Not running from the woods to the other side. Crossing in front of me, angled, moving the way a person might. It had gotten ahead. Of course it had. I swerved, heart in my throat, and the truck slid a little, tires catching and correcting. I clenched the wheel so hard my hands hurt. The shape vanished into the trees. A few minutes later, it happened again. Ahead, in the headlights, a shadow stepping onto the road, pausing, then moving off. It was pacing me, toying with me. I saw it sometimes on the right, sometimes on the left, always just far enough away that I couldn't get a clean shot, always in a position that made me feel trapped between crashing and stopping. And then, this is the part that still makes my blood turn cold, it mimicked a person again, I heard it above the engine noise, carried through the trees. A sound like laughter. Not quite right, like someone had heard humans laugh and tried to copy it the way a parrot copies words, broken and wet and wrong. I gritted my teeth and kept driving. At one point, the road dipped into a shallow valley, and the temperature dropped so suddenly my breath fogged thicker. My headlights reflected off icy patches, and I realized if I hit one wrong, I'd end up in a ditch and that would be the end. That's when I saw something that saved my life. A faint orange glow ahead, not headlights, steady, low, a building. A ranger maintenance station, maybe, or an old service shed with a single security light burning. A little square of human stubbornness in all that dark. I nearly cried. I rolled into the lot fast, tires crunching loud, and skidded to a stop near the building. The place looked abandoned, boarded windows, peeling paint, but the light was on. I grabbed my flashlight, the revolver, and jumped out. The cold hit like a hammer. My boots slipped slightly on packed snow. The station had a heavy door with a metal handle and a padlock, but the lock was hanging open, like someone had left in a hurry. I yanked the door open and stumbled inside. The smell hit me. Old wood, dust, and stale fuel. The inside was dark except for my flashlight beam cutting through it. I slammed the door and threw the deadbolt. Thank God it had one. I stood there panting, revolver shaking in my hand, listening. Silence. Then, outside, slow footsteps on snow. Crunch, crunch, crunch. It had followed. I aimed my flashlight through a crack in the boarded window and caught movement. Tall shadow circling the building, head low, scenting. It reached the door and stopped. For a second, nothing happened. Then the handle moved. Not rattled, turned, slowly. Like it was trying to open it the way a person would. The deadbolt held. A long pause, and then the creature pressed its face to the crack between the door and the frame. I saw one eye, yellow, bright, watching. Then it exhaled, and the gap fogged. It was right there. I raised the revolver, breath coming in hot, panicked bursts. And then it stepped back. I heard it move away, circling, dragging claws along the wall with that awful, slow scrape, like it was marking the building. Then something hit the back wall hard. The whole shed shuddered. Then again, testing, probing, trying to find the weak spot. I stumbled deeper into the shed, scanning with the flashlight. There were old tools, broken shelves, a workbench. Someone had once kept this place functional. There was also a steel cabinet with a faded warning sticker. Flammable fuel storage. My mechanic brain clicked. Fuel. If this thing tried to force its way in, I needed something more than a handgun. I yanked the cabinet open. Inside, a couple old red gas cans, dusty but not empty, and a box of rolled flares. Bless whoever stocked those and forgot them. I grabbed 2 flares and a gas can. My hands were shaking so hard I spilled a little fuel on the floor, and the smell rose sharp. Outside, the scraping stopped. silence. Then a new sound. The creature climbed. Claws on wood, weight shifting. It was on the roof. I stared up, heart pounding, imagining it dropping through the ceiling like a nightmare. The roof creaked as it moved across. Then it paused right above me. Then came the tapping again, this time from above. Tap, tap, tap. Like it was reminding me it could reach me anywhere. I struck a flare. The bright red light exploded into life, filling the shed with harsh color and shadows that leapt like living things. Smoke curled up. I struck the second flare and shoved one into my jacket pocket, holding the other out like a torch. The tapping stopped. I heard it shift on the roof, uneasy now. Animals don't like fire, and whatever this was, it still had animal instincts under that intelligence. I moved to the door, flare in one hand, a revolver in the other. I didn't open the door, not yet. I waited, listening for a breath, a scrape, anything. Nothing. Slowly, the roof creaked again, weight moving away. I realized then it had backed off. Not defeated, just reconsidering again. I stayed in that shed for what felt like hours, but it might have been 40 minutes. The flares burned down, bright then weaker then died. I kept one last flare unlit, saving it like a final prayer. When the silence had gone on long enough that my nerves started to ring, I crept to the boarded window again and shined my flashlight through a crack. At first, nothing. Then, at the edge of the lot, near my truck, I saw it. Standing in the darkness just beyond the security light's reach, watching. It wasn't trying to hide, it wanted me to know it was still there. I raised the flashlight beam, and it stepped forward slightly, letting the light catch its face. It looked pleased. Then it did the thing that made my stomach turn. It lowered its head, sniffed the air, and made that broken whispering sound again, almost like a person trying to speak. And this time, I swear to you, it sounded like a name. Not clear, not human, but close enough that my blood went cold, like it had listened when I said Brian out loud earlier, alone in my truck, like it remembered. It stepped back into the dark and vanished. When daylight finally bled into the sky, pale and weak, I left the shed. My truck was still there. The driver's door was dented inward. The paint had long claw marks. The shattered window was rimmed with ice. The battery was barely alive, but it started with a sluggish crank. I drove downhill, slow and careful, until I found cell service. I called Kara with my hands that wouldn't stop shaking. I told her I had car trouble. I told her I'd be late. I didn't tell her why my voice sounded like I'd been crying. Some lies are mercy. A tow truck met me on a wider road. The driver looked at the damage and whistled. "Hit tree?" he asked. I stared at him, wanting to laugh, wanting to scream. "Something like that," I said. Back home, Kara saw the truck and demanded the truth. I gave her some of it, enough that she understood why I was suddenly hugging Lily like I'd been gone for years instead of days. I didn't tell Lily anything. She's a kid. She deserves a world with fewer monsters. But here's why I'm writing this at all. Because a week after I got home, I was cleaning out my bag and that magazine fell out. The Dogman article, creased and stained from being stuffed in a pocket. I flipped it open like an idiot, like maybe it would give me closure. And there in the margin, in my own handwriting, because I'd scribbled notes while reading it at lunch, was a line I barely remembered writing. If it's real, it learns you. At the time I wrote it like a joke. Now I'm not laughing. 2 nights after that, I took the trash out behind my house. Austin winter isn't like the mountains, but it can still get quiet. Still. I stood by the bin, bread visible, and for a second I smelled it. Wet dog, rot, pennies. I froze, listening. Nothing moved, no crunch of snow, no footsteps, just the distant hum of a highway and my own heartbeat. I hurried back inside and locked the door, like a man who would forgotten how fragile locks are. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe my brain is scared and looking for patterns. But sometimes, late at night, when the house is asleep and I'm staring at the ceiling, I remember that thing standing just outside the light, watching, smiling, letting me go because it knew where I lived now. So, if you ever find yourself on a quiet winter road and the woods go silent like they're listening, and you smell pennies where there shouldn't be any, don't get out of the truck. Don't assume you're alone. And for the love of God, don't laugh at the stories people tell in magazines. Some of them are warnings, and some warnings learn your name.